been a week of Mondays, but the weekend's here. Dust on my boots and a smile with my beard. Neons humming low where the knows our name. Same old bar stools, but it never feels the same. We raise a glass to the miles we've made, to the stories told and the dues we paid. Amber light in a crystal glow, a little burn in a heart that knows. On the Bourbon Road, where the good times roll, passing bottles like a piece of soul. Every pour's a memory, every sip a spark, lighting up the night in the Kentucky dark. Ain't no man, just the ties we've sown on the long winding Bourbon Road.
All right, listeners, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Road podcast. This is Todd Ritter tonight, and I'm flying solo, but not quite solo because I've got Chip Tate, the master distiller of innovation for Ampersand Spirits. Chip, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
All right, man. So before we kind of get into Ampersand's story and your story, we always like to dive into that first pour. So what are we sipping on?
Well, let's try some Vinea first. This is I guess we'll kind of talk about the series in general and in specific, but
right.
You could call Ampersand my fun little house of curiosities. So unusual things done for different reasons. Not unusual in terms of how I feel like the spirit comes out, but just in terms of the story of how it came to be. So this particular one is definitely one of those really happenstance. I bought a bunch of cognac barrels that I intended to use in another distilling project that, well, it took years. In fact, it never even evolved to anything. So I brought those barrels back to the U.S. This was 2015. And was it 2015? Yeah, 2015. And, if you know barrels, you know that you got to put something in them to keep them sound. If you just leave them to dry out, they'll just fall apart even drier than they were before you filled them. So we put some neutral grain spirit in there in view of just keeping them in good condition. It was going to be 6 months or a year or something like that. And next thing you know, it'd been over 9 years that I had.
Oh, wow.
So I know you were curious to know, how neutral this neutral spirit was. And the answer is, not very neutral. I mean,
wow. That is crazy
old,
dark.
It looks about as old as just most things. And so 25% of Vinea is that liquid. And if I can describe it, it's, thin in body, obviously, because it's a neutral spirit start, but it has all kinds of fruit and esters and extraction from the wood. It's kind of this interesting essence of cognac. And of course, it has a very strong tannin profile. So these are, French casks. If you know French casks, if you've got something that's pretty well toasted, as these were, and old French wood, and then you extract it hot, you're going to get a lot of tannins. And it's so tannic that, if you just drink it on its own, it kind of turns your tongue black. It's like, yeah. I feel thirsty. So I blended it with 75% rye whiskey, and that became Vinea.
Now, is Vinea just a word you came up with, or does it mean something?
Well, it just means, it basically just means vineyard.
Okay.
All of these names are kind of notional. They're kind of about something. This is, again, about the vinous character of it from the cognac. Malus is kind of a play on words. Malus domestica is the Latin name of apples, and that's something that's basically half rye whiskey, half apple brandy. And optimus means kind of ripe or juicy. And I felt like that was a great word to describe, abundant, I guess you'd say. That was a great word to describe that whiskey, which we'll get to. But this is one that kind of has, it plays with you because it's light in certain ways, but it has a lot of character, I think, in others.
Yeah, I'm getting light of almost like grapevine.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's that cognac cask is very present. There's a little graininess to it as well.
Exactly. And it almost has, I mean, this isn't accurate because it's not Irish whiskey, but if you're a fan of Irish whiskey, it has certain kind of balance profile in terms of like bigger than you'd expect in some ways and sort of cleaner and lighter than you expect in others, or at least compared to bourbon.
Right. And we should say this is 92 proof, correct?
Yeah, 92.
Well, I'm ready to take a sip. Cheers.
Cheers. Clearing my palate here.
I actually previewed these like Friday. I was so intrigued by these because well, actually one of my first questions was like, you think of neutral spirits and that if you're any kind of bourbon person, you automatically start thinking of like, the 70s where, sales were down and they were kind of right. So,
and that's part of what's fun about this is, you think of neutral grain like you're thinking of as this kind of almost ghetto thing when this is super bougie, right? I mean, like this is crazy.
Right.
You never go out of your way on purpose to age it for 9 years, but it is kind of an analog. If you like a broader set of whiskeys, I got introduced to this years ago to make blended Scotch whiskey. Obviously, you've got malt whiskey in there, but you also have grain whiskey, which isn't quite neutral grain, but it's close. It's pretty neutral. And the point is that when you taste those aged grain whiskeys, I feel like it has a lot of similar characteristics, sort of really big and fruity on the nose and light and certain, it's a totally different animal than you're going to get from your traditional whiskey profile.
Yeah, that grapiness kind of still pops up on the palate for sure. And it's really soft.
Yeah. It definitely has this palate hit that stays there, but it's also soft, like you said. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, why'd you guys settle at 92 proof on this?
46% is generally considered to be the lowest proof at which you can not chill filter. I don't do chill filtration because I feel like it strips a lot of flavor and aroma out of the whiskey. So anything that I do at, low proof, I'll typically do at 46% in whiskey. Now, in agave, it's similar, 45, 46, 47, but 46 is kind of the nominal rate. And I think you first saw that with a lot of the UK independent bottlers when they started doing a lot of the non-chill filtered. But now it's become a thing. So,
gotcha.
But that's, that's a fuzzy line because as we'll get to later, when you look at Gambit, it's non-chill filtered and it's a beautiful whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hold it up to the light, you'll see, it isn't quite as dead clear. Now, especially that's because you've got a lot of wine cask finishes. I won't get deep into the chemistry, but that kind of haze has to do with esters and it has to do with tannins. And you're going to get a lot of those, both of those categories from wine barrels.
Okay.
So I won't say that all wine barrel whiskey is more prone to chill haze, but like kind of. So anyway, 46% is my bottom of the rung, because we're not gonna go below.
Okay, let's go back to kind of your beginnings. You've been in the spirits biz for a while, but what kind of led you there, I guess?
Well, I mean, I think my path really started far before I knew it in a way. So I got really into cooking, baking when I was young, like, 11, 12 years old, and making sauces and just became a real fiend digging into how flavors were built and different methodology and the science of it and everything. So then when I was in college, I won't say exactly what point, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 21, I started brewing. And in truth, I actually did some experimental brewing under the stairs when I was quite young. But, this cooking turned into brewing. And then I was actually hoping to become a professional brewer at one point, and then switched gears. So it was personal delay, lots of different things happened. And during that time, I really became more of a a whiskey drinker than a beer drinker, and decided to start Texas's first whiskey with Balcones. So that was my start. And then, I left there in 2014 and did still making. Actually, I was building copper stills for myself, but also others, craft distillers. And then 2024 joined Foley to become their master distiller for innovation. So that's how this is the first series that I launched with Foley.
Okay. And then where did the Ampersand idea kind of come from? I mean, the Ampersand is the Roman symbol for or et al.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, the concept was something that I cooked up when I was blending a lot of different things, starting with the Malice, and then the Venia. Opmus was a later add-on, but the name itself was my wife's. We were sitting around and knocking around ideas, and she said, "What about Ampersand?" I said, "That sounds pretty good." It's really it's two different things that don't always go together, and how different that is really just depends on the situation. But it's getting to a conventionally beautiful place in an unconventional way.
Very nice. I can't get over how complex this is.
Yeah. And I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think a lot of people associate lighter whiskeys with not having complexity. And I hope to show, you can do a lot of complexity even here.
Right. Now, so I'm just curious, just out of curiosity, how much flavor did the cognac impart on that neutral grain? I mean, was it pretty impressive, or are we getting that spice from more of the rye?
I'd say the spice is more from the rye, and also from the tannins from the cognac casks. So the juiciness of the cognac doesn't really come through in terms of the body of the spirits, so much as you get those fruit aromas and the other nuances from age. These were ex-cognac barrels that I picked out myself when I was there in France and then imported. So I had a very particular profile in mind when I chose them. They weren't just your standard barrels, but it's funny what you end up getting from barrels, and certain aspects of the spirit or the wine that was in them tend to really be emphasized over others. There'll be some parts that are almost entirely absent, and then so the fruit, the body of the fruit will often not be there, but the aroma of the fruit and other sort of fermentation components will be there.
Okay. Shall we dive into the Malice?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Sounds great. You want to tell the folks all about it?
Huh?
I said, do you want to tell the folks about it?
Oh, for sure. So Malice is something that I cooked up, honestly, when I was blending a collection of different things at once, and I just had a crazy idea to combine rye whiskey and Malice, rye whiskey and apple brandy. The idea really was to make a cross-category spirit, because that's something that we don't normally do.
Right.
And I say the reasons, when you think about them, are very historical. So the reason that people made grape brandy or apple brandy or whatever, it really had to do with agriculture. So that is to say, people who grew apples did everything apple. They make cider, they sell apples, they sell apple products, they do brandy. And as the distiller, I'm really more of the chef than the farmer. And so if I want to put, mushrooms from one farm together with bacon from another, why not? And the only answer why not, it's not usual, but it's delicious. And so that's kind of the idea across categories. You could say it's also kind of a fun play on barrel finishing, which I do, like how much apple brandy influence is there? Well, it's 49%, so pretty good amount, right? As much as you can get without it being most of it. But I love the way that the rye and the apple brandy play together. And I feel like it's one of those unusual combinations that most people tend to get. They're just like, wow, that's a nice...
Yeah, I think Brandy is one of those finishes anyway that I really, really enjoy. I was always kind of skeptical because, I'm a Kentucky guy. So like the brandies I used to see back in the day were, that E&J and Christian Brothers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So
that's one of the things that I guess sometimes the spirits I'm making are a bit of a commentary on the industry, not a negative commentary, but just sort of like, what about this too? What if we did this too? And so specifically in this case, I feel like apple brandy has an important connection. And this is French apple brandy, Calvados.
Right, Calvados, yeah.
But apple brandy as a category has a really strong connection to America and its history as well, and so it is kind of this fun way of bringing back something ultra-American historically via France, combined with something ultra-American with rye whiskey.
Right. A lot of people would argue it was our first, probably the first spirit made around here.
Laird's Distillery is the first DSP in the country, and they're an apple brandy distillery. So it's just proof of your point.
This reminds me of like, those like potpourri, but it's like all apple, cinnamon.
And there is an apple and spice. You see how the spice of the rye goes very naturally together with the apple.
And what was the percentage of blend on this?
I mean, it's 49% Calvados. So it's basically 50-50. But technically it's 51% rye whiskey.
Yeah, that's just delicious.
Thanks.
It's like applesauce, a little dash of cinnamon.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I don't think there's as much rye spice on this one as the first one.
And it's because even though I think, that's you're noticing there's like a conversation even between the spirits.
Right.
So this has apples, you could argue, is kind of a lighter, fresher flavor in certain ways. But it's apple brandy. This is that rich. It's such a rich spirit, is what I'm saying. I feel like Calvados brings out the richest parts of the apple, and it actually ends up being as much of a heavy hitter as the rye whiskey. It stands up to the rye whiskey. Is really what I'm saying.
I think my biggest misconception about brandy was I always thought it was sweet. And then as I learned more, I found out, it's just kind of like cognac's cousin, kind of.
That's true. And another thing that, everybody has their own rules for their own reasons. I'm a little bit of a purist myself in terms of like, if you're going to add something other than water, so we all kind of understand that if it's at some proof, it's not cask proof, that people have added water. That's kind of implied in understanding how spirits work. But if you've added anything else, I want to know. I want to know what it is that you've added. But that said, it is traditional to add up to 2% sugar to a lot of French brandies. That's allowed in their regulations. And so it is particularly the case that younger, rougher brandies will have a higher sugar addition to try to mask that. And so all that together kind of gives you this like, it's not on the same par with a well-aged bourbon, for instance. But conversely, if you're looking at really similarly aged and similar quality brandies, none of that's true. The sugar addition is optional but not necessary. And this is, 7+-year-old spirit. So it is, you can always kind of argue where the right amount is. I feel like with brandies, and especially for me with apple brandies, as much as I really appreciate the super old stuff, I want it when it's juicy. I want it when it's that kind of like 6 to 10-year-old stage is often some of my favorite, maybe 12. You get a lot more complexity with age, of course. You get a lot more tannin, but there's a ripe sort of fat juiciness that you get in that relatively young Calvados that I really appreciate. And you see it here in Malice.
Now, with the Vinia being such a, I guess like a glorious mistake, kind of like you kind of forgot about the barrels and, threw that in there just to kind of keep them wet. I mean, is that something that's going to be, is that going to make it limited, or, are you going to,
there's only a certain amount of this particular one. And, we decided to include some of those. That's always a hard choice as a maker. Do you do something that you can't do again?
Right.
I think the answer is, like, under the right conditions, sure, why not? I mean, if you've got 30 cases of it, that's kind of messy. I've tried sharing really small amounts of spirits before, and it was messy. I did not get picked. But, we had maybe 1,000 cases, something like that, which is not a lot, but it's enough to put it out there and let people try it. So unfortunately, this will not be forever. Malice is something we can continue to produce, plan to. And we haven't gotten to the Optimus yet, but it won't surprise you to know that, the liquid that's made from that particular 15-year-old there's a limited amount of that. When it's gone, it's gone.
Right.
So, but that's pretty normal, I think, for a lot of older bourbons. People understand.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what's the MSRP on these two?
I believe these are running about $59 on these
59,
first two.
That's a great price.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like very, very affordable for the quality, for the character, and not just for the novelty factor. These are always one of my best measures is I have friends over to the house, and I simply look at which bottles I need to replace the most. And these two bottles I need to replace a lot. So that tells me that there's somebody that wants to mess with them, Not that the others aren't, but these are both delicious and they're easy drinkers.
I mean, if you gave this to someone blind, they would almost think it. I mean, if they have any kind of decent palate and knowledge, they might say it's brandy finish. I don't know. Right.
And it kind of does put you on your toes. You're like, wait, it's so fruity. Like, it's intentionally kind of confusing, but that's the idea, is to kind of have a conversation that's unusual between brandy and whiskey. And, does this broach the line between spirits and cocktail? Like, not really. But what is that line? I mean, honestly, it's an arbitrary line that we draw when we put it in the bottle. But it's a conversation that's fluid. From the moment you conceive something to the moment you pour it in a glass.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways you can take it.
And I think at this price, this is like, it looks great, and we'll get to the bottle, maybe probably the second half, but I'm like, this is, like you said, this is something, we're sitting here drinking it neat, but you could also pour a rock in it and soften it up even a little more. And then, like you said, I think one of the things you guys really highlight in your website is some of the great cocktails these two spirits would make.
Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of different things to make great cocktails, but I think these are kind of extra fun in the sense that they add elements you don't normally have at your disposal. I'm a pretty lazy mixologist. I will cop to that. So I don't do that much, but I work with some great mixologists, and some of the comments that they give me are just, it inspires them to kind of go in different directions. They're very parallel, but like, using malice in an old fashioned is actually really good, or just on rocks, or any number of kind of conventional cocktails that you would try with different whiskeys. This makes an interesting take.
So what kind of drew you to this Foley family project kind of thing?
Well, honestly, I had the pleasure of meeting my now boss, Sean Schiffer, and he sold me on Foley's plan to develop spirits. Obviously, they've traditionally been a wine company. The brief backstory, Bill Foley is a famous financier, billionaire who's done many different things, but in the alcohol zone, it was mostly in wine. And they've done a few things here and there in spirits, but not as a primary focus. So I came on to help them develop that portfolio and to bring some of my particular gifts, I guess you'd say, to the mix. We already had do have a great team at Minden Mill. That's one of our brands. And, we've got a handful of other things, obviously Lighthouse Gin, and a lot of great partners that we don't produce, but we distribute, El Mexicano Tequila and so forth. So it's me and a handful of other folks trying to create a great collection for Foley.
Yeah, we had the luxury of having Joe on from Min and Mill not too long ago, and again, very impressive.
Yes,
spirits.
Great guy. He's been making spirits for a long time. Yeah,
right. That whole rick house and the airport controlled temperature thing is just it's like
it is crazy.
It's got to cost a fortune to be in Nevada to do that.
It is not a system that was designed by somebody on a budget. This was originally Bentley Heritage, and I don't know, but I've been told that Chris Bentley is not a poor man, so he wanted it how he wanted it, and good on him. It is a really beautiful setup, and it gives us some wonderful luxury. So, for instance, we have one warehouse that's Kentucky conditions,
right,
and another essentially the Scottish Highland conditions. And for a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, the Scottish warehouse is perfect in terms of extracting exactly what I'm trying to extract and develop in these wine finishes.
So do you foresee maybe using some of that Min and Mill whiskey for things at some point?
I don't know that I'll be using the Min and Mill whiskey.
Okay.
That's pretty much focused around the Min and Mill brands, and that's
gotcha.
Joe's domain. There could be a time when I do a project at Min and Mill and get to use those beautiful stills. It's a long thing to plan out because of the way that the estate works. They essentially have to either grow or contract for grain or whatever material it is. So there's a long time frame. But who knows? Someday maybe.
Yeah,
it would be great. Yeah.
All right. Well, how about we take a short break and we'll come back and we've got two more spirits. So you guys sit tight and we'll be right back.
We argue notes, vanilla or smoke, but it's all just part of the bond.
All right, roadies, we finally released our brand new website. We hope you get a chance to check it out at thebourbonroad.com. It is a total rewrite, remake, revamped. We've done it for you. We have all 500 or so episodes on there with all the details, searchable, all the show notes, everything. You can search by it. You want to go find out what we talked about on an episode way back when, you can do it. We've also got our tasting notes, our reviews of over 1,320 whiskeys. They're all on there. Todd and I, our tasting notes, our rating for the whiskey. We even queue up the episode on the tasting notes to where we tasted it on the show. So as you're reading our tasting notes, you can play it and listen to us talk about it. So I think we're the only podcast that does that. That's pretty cool. So another thing we have on there is our blog articles. We've got over 250 blog articles on there. We're putting new ones out all the time. And the all-new Roadie Bar is now on the Bourbon Road website. So if you're a roadie, come on, sign up, get in there. We have a chat room. We've got a place where you can post what's going on in your bourbon world. We have a calendar of all the events that are coming up. We'll be posting in there our drawings. So as we're giving things away, you'll be able to come in there and sign up for the randomizer to get picked. You'll also be able to sign up on lists to come to something that we're sponsoring. Todd's got a great event that we're putting on in the fall, and everybody can come in and sign up for that. And we've also got coupons from our vendors for sort of percentages off on stuff. So definitely take the time to come to the website, check it out. We do want you to come in and sign up and join in. It's a lot of fun. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You're certainly welcome to donate if you want to, but it's free for all roadies. So come check it out.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the second half of the show. I'm sitting here with Chip Tate, the Master Distiller for Innovation at Ampersand Spirits. We first tried the Vinia, which was a blend of rye and neutral grain spirits. Quite impressive. I was a little skeptical. That's why I popped this open Friday, and I was like, that's kind of scary. You just think about that. But very impressive stuff. And then we followed that up with the Malice. And it's a blend of 51 rye and 49 Calvados.
Calvados.
Apple
the
brandy.
French apple brandy. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are both at 92 proof and MSRP of $59.99, and excellent. And
Thanks.
I think we're ready for our third pour. And I'm going to give somebody a shout out real quick because your PR person did not have this bottle. So,
Okay.
I have friends in high and low places.
yeah.
So someone sent me a sample of this. My good buddy, John Legalbo. He's
good.
I believe he's out in, I think he's in Texas. He might be in Texas as well. So shout out to
Thank
John.
you, John. Yeah, this one has proved popular, and so it's there are still bottles to be had, but apparently however fast they're flowing through the system is not always the right speed because it can be hard to get.
Right. So tell the folks about this one.
All right, so Optimus. I was lucky enough to inherit some 15-year-old barrels from Wild Turkey. I got hold of the spirit and I really enjoyed it. But especially in view of this series, I was kind of like, well, as much as good as it is, I felt like it had a lot more tannin. This is kind of similar actually to the Vinia, that it had a lot more tannin in there than it had body, and so I needed to blend that out with something else. And so, in the case of Optimus, it's just pure 15-year-old Wild Turkey. I'm not supposed to say that, sorry, but it is. Sorry.
It's one of those, if you know kind of things there. I mean.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I just kind of dropped it out there. It's such an open secret that anyway. And then finished it in Tokai barrels. So I don't know if you know Tokai. It's probably most similar to like Sauterne, but I like them at least as much. It's a mold ripened white wine, so you get these really rich, deep, juicy fruit notes and some sweetness. And I felt like that would be the perfect complement to the whiskey, and especially balance out. I was getting, these were barrels, I think a lot of them had been stored rather high, and so there was a whole lot of extraction and getting kind of chewy, as they say. So I wanted to counter that chewiness with some roundness and some fruit.
If these are related to the 15-year-old single barrels, I actually got to pick a 15-year-old single barrel from an unknown source, quotation marks. Some of those were very rough, but I mean, we did find a gem, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges. I feel like this is true with all spirits, but I think you could say particularly bourbon. Because you're always going to be in a new charred oak container. And when you've got that going on, there's the potential to extract a whole lot of wood, maybe more than you want. Right. Wood, I kind of think, especially tannin, I think of it as like salt on meat. It's a great thing, and it adds a lot. But you can't get too much of a good thing. So you're always basically, as someone mining spirits, trying to make sure that you don't over oak it before it's mature as you want it to be. And so this was a way to sort of bring some of that chewiness down a little bit, or at least meld it together with some other big flavors and make it work compositionally.
Yeah. This may have one of the best noses I've smelled all year.
Thank you.
It's just, it smells rich. There's like some
everybody's
almost like floral qualities to it to me.
Yeah, sort of floral
and juicy. Like you said, the juicy thing is there, like almost like juicy fruit gum.
And the tobacco is there at the same time. And that light dryness that I feel like complements the sweetness really well, but it's not overwhelming. So this one's stronger. I was going to say,
this is that one, 117 proof, I think.
So there have been 1, 2, 3 bottlings. There have been more bottlings. Anyway, 3 blends.
Gotcha. And this is 116.6 proof is the one we have. So
that's the first one. Okay. So that's the only way you can know them, honestly, is by the proof. And one of the interesting things about it, they're very, very similar. but obviously the first one happened before the second one, before the third one, etc.
Right.
So you see some difference in time. It's probably not more than 4 or 5 months, 3 to 4 months, we'll say different. See, we did the first one about a year ago. I guess a bit more than that. But the evolution of the Tokai finish. So the first is at 58.3, the second is at 58.0, and the third is at 57.9. So that's just, for the geeks, those are very tight in terms of proof.
Right.
But in terms of knowing the order in which they were bottled, and therefore kind of which spent the least, next longest, and longest amount of time in Tokai.
So what was about the average on those Tokai finishes?
They're about 58, right? They're all, I think the earliest.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
About how long were they in the Tokai barrels? About on average.
Right. I knew you were going to ask me that. Let's think.
Oh, sorry.
About a year. I think the first were in there about a year, and now it's about 2 years. Let's see if I got.
And this is
right.
that one, like you said, you kept this at a higher proof, and rather than drop it to 92 for like you did the others. So did you just like it as is, and you didn't want to spoil it by
at the stronger proof? But also, this is a $149 bottle.
Right.
And so, price is connected to proof. The water is, in fact, cheaper than the booze. So I would say for higher price stuff, you really have all the options on the table. And I also think for most older whiskeys, it's better to put it out at higher proof. Some can be too high, but to give people a chance to taste it kind of in its original glory, because it will expand the whiskey a lot. And there's nothing wrong with adding water, but I'm just saying that if I give it to you at this proof, that's the highest proof that you'll ever taste it at.
Right.
And you can always, take license to add ice or water or whatever, but you can't take it the other direction. So it's more sort of the luxury, this one has shades. You can, but I do feel that it's really drinkable and integrated and dense at this proof.
Oh, it's delicious. I love it.
Good.
It's got like this, like stewed raisins.
Yeah.
That leather is just sneaking around there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I love this. Oh, John, a big kiss for this.
Yeah, I'm glad. And as always, I can't, there will be a point in the not too distant future when we can't get bottles. But in the meantime, let me know where we can't get bottles, and I do what I can. The distributors tend to see them fly out really quickly, and so they're trying to hold back some. I'm like, well, that's good, as long as we don't hold back so much people can't get it, which is kind of the point. So I'm always trying to figure out where there are pinch points, and then try to help people out.
I could sit and sip this. This might have been should have been the nightcap, I'm going to say, because I just want to sit and savor this for a while.
Yeah, that is the hard thing, is because if I were just doing a tasting outside of the series, Gambit would probably be the next dense, and that's a wonderful whiskey, but it's a $65 whiskey at 46 proof. It's not as it's a 6-year-old, it's just a different animal than a 15-year-old. I
like that you're still allowing some of those, like the best parts of that bourbon to kind of shine through.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you called that out, because that's really what I was going for. I think some of the concern of certain people who might be worried about cask finishes is, that you're covering up what's beautiful about the original bourbon. And what I really try to do is try to complement it, and in certain ways even highlight it. So there's certain aspects where I feel like the spice comes out in this, and it plays along with the sweetness and the juiciness rather than one covering up the other.
All right. Before we jump into the Gambit, be sure to give this a really long answer so I can sip on this some more. So
you should definitely
tell me about this bottle. I mean, is this something you guys came up with, or is it like you guys have one of the wackiest bottle brokers out there in the world, and he's like, check this out?
So we've got to give credit to, we work with a lot of great marketing people and designers. Ann Gustafson is our designer on this, and there was a more elaborate bottle that we worked on together, mostly her, to give you the bottle that you see now. So, it's a challenge for the team to design around because there aren't as many flat places, but I think it's really cool. I'm sure everybody's seen it, but the facets, the facets in the bottle, it's kind of jewel-like. And it's decanter style. And I think they did a nice job with it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, like, if you're walking past a shelf, it's going to be like, hey, that looks different,
Yeah, you'll notice it. And I'll mention, too, I'm not supposed to go into it. I'm teasing this out a little bit, but there is another coming in the series.
Ooh.
That if you're an Optimus fan, you'll want to check this next one out.
Ooh, you heard it here, folks.
They are brothers from another mother.
Well, hopefully our PR person maybe sends us a sample of that to review or something.
We'll see what we can figure out. Yeah, we'll have to figure that out.
Awesome.
But there's more.
All right.
More
As much as I hate to leave this Optimus, we got to move on. And not to say this, like I said, I tried all these, and this is a treat too.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll talk a little bit more about Gambit, but just in terms of the differences, this is a session whiskey. I mean, this is the whiskey analog to a great red wine at the dinner table. Complex, nuanced, has as much to find in there as you want to find, and also just pleasant and drinkable and structured and a nice complement to a lot of other things. So Gambit was really an early project in terms of conception at Foley. It just recently came out because it took us about 2 years, or took me about 2 years to get through the whole process of what I wanted to do. But it started as a complex maneuver into wine barrel finish, I guess you could say. I was combining different wine barrel finishes to try to bring I guess you would say this is an analog, a Bordeaux wine is made up from up to 6 grapes. And there is a profile that we all associate with that region that isn't associated with any one grape. And there's a very similar structure to Gambit in terms of some of those components play really big pieces. And then others are nuances and tweaks and add, very delicate components to the way the whole thing comes together. But just to kind of talk about what it is, it's a 6-year-old high malt bourbon, and 6 years old, as in we started with 6-year-old. It's been aged more in barrel since then, but as you know, they don't count those years for bourbon. So then some of it goes straight into some Cabernet Sauvignon barrels and lives there for the duration. It's about less than 20%. And the other portion goes first into some stripped and retoasted Chardonnay barrels. Now, there's a little bit of the Chardonnay character that remains, but mostly what you get from that is the structure of wine barrel. That is to say, the vanillins, the lactones, the other things that you bring out that are more particular to French oak and also more particular to toasted, so you could say, I'm not saying that is the prototypical wine barrel, but it's certainly a different barrel than a charred American oak barrel, which is arguably the prototypical bourbon barrel. So it's this kind of counterpoint. But all the liquid that comes out of there then gets split to be aged in 4 different types of barrels: Oloroso, Muscatel, Tokay, and Laird's Apple Brandy, which I will grant is not a wine barrel, but it's fruity, so whatever, it works. And to me, it's not just that it works, it is a key component in tying together these different fruit qualities. Because, one of the things anybody would worry about on a 6-way bet is this is 6 different ways to be wrong. There's a possibility that 5 would have been great, but 6 is where it all fell apart. You got to really look at that. So, but I had a very particular notion of what I wanted. Again, an analog to a Bordeaux structure that I built and had to change my strategy throughout. So, it spent a good 18 plus months months in secondary oak. And it's a notably different effect. I feel like, you're really more into like secondary aging. It's not technically that, but what I mean by that is if you just finish something for a couple months, you definitely get the influence of the liquid that was on the surface of the barrel, which is great. But when you go over a year, you're getting deep down in there and you're starting to pull a whole different set of components and characteristics from those barrels. It's a much deeper and more nuanced finishing process that starts to reshape the whiskey. So anyway, 46% and 6 different barrel finishes.
So you finished these like all about the same? That was my question. Like, I mean, how did you, it's just kind of mind blowing to like what you did here, because I feel like, if you went a little too long with something, it might dominate the blend. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like you were like checking them like, like every week or something, just to.
Not every week. Okay. I mean, you do learn, but you're exactly right that you have a pretty good idea of how long this is going to take, but you check. You check not only individual barrels, but a lot of barrels. Are there some that are starting to get way too something in the mix that you need to catch? Or are they all relatively homogeneous? Or, you'll find all these different patterns that happen with different barrels. So, perfect example. For me, these Cabernet barrels, and they're really nice Cabernet barrels, but it's Cabernet that has a strong malolactic component in it. And it's kind of that like fully cultured butter. The way you taste, it's almost like not sour butter, but that sort of piquant butter. And what I find with those type of barrels is it'll kind of get to this certain stage and almost stay there for months. And then all of a sudden it'll sort of pop over the edge. And that's when the fruit and these other components come in. And you have to just be waiting there and checking. There's a lot of shepherding that goes into this. That's the hardest part of Gambit, is not the conception, it's the execution. Because every time I blend this and reblend this, I'm tasting, at least 400 barrels of different things to not only decide which should go into the blend, but which barrels stay as they are. Mm-hmm. Do they need to go somewhere else? This is a general evaluation of where we're going and how it's shaping and what we might need to change. What do you think?
Well, coming off that Optimus, it's a little light on the nose, but that Optimus has such a monster of a nose. It's not surprising,
well, nearly 10 years difference, but more particularly the proof. Right. One thing I wish we could do, and we may be able to do in time, is I've got a bottle of what you're tasting, but at 59%.
Oh, wow.
And it's not the same. But what I would say is if you taste the cask strength version of this, you're like, okay, wow. Like, actually, that's a big, beautiful whiskey. It works really well at different proofs. So part of why I brought this down in proof is because price point. Honestly, I didn't want it to be over, 100. But the other part of it is there's a real softness and integration. This is a whiskey that will break down if you proof it. A lot of complex brandy blends are this way too. That once you get to a certain point, you really need to proof them down slowly. And if you don't, the whiskey will kind of break. And what I mean by that is it's like you get this flavor and then that flavor and then that flavor. It's almost like a hollandaise that is broken.
Yeah.
You still have lemon in there and you still have butter in there, but they're all kind of in different bits
disjointed.
And pieces. You don't have sauce. Yeah. And there's a very similar chemical thing that's going on in terms of emulsified things that are barely in solution that want to be in this high ethanolic solution. So we bring it down to like 50 something and then have to go slow to make, over a month to make sure that the proofing is the way we want it.
Right.
So
the more notes that I don't know if like it's like each barrel is kind of coming out. I get like a little bit of the apple.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a little minerality maybe from that Chardonnay.
Right.
And then maybe a little nuttiness from the sherry.
It's very nuanced. And it's one of those that, like, if you can take it apart a lot better at this proof than at higher proof. And in that way, it's more nuanced. Of course, the other is this sort of big, like, it's like this huge chord. Right. As you bring it down, you get to hear the different notes play.
All right. Well, I'm going to take a sip now. Cheers.
All right.
Oh, that's like a fruit medley.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the berries. Like there's a little bit of like.
It's kind of. I don't want to say this is essence of wine because what does that even mean?
Right.
But it does have characteristics of all these different wines that I've tied together in different ways. The brightness of the Chardonnay, the richness of the Oloroso and the nuttiness, the juiciness of the Tokai, the light butter characteristic on the Cabernet, an apple brandy to tie it all together.
Yeah, that's wild.
It is kind of an intentionally constructed chord, and I think that's what people need to understand too. It's like any musical performance. Of course, you can screw it up, but if you understand how chords work, you kind of know which notes are going to work together.
Right.
They got rules for that.
So I've got to ask, why, the Ampersand is under one website, whereas the Gambit number 6 kind of flies solo.
It's its own brand.
Okay, own brand.
And
gotcha.
So, not that I disagree. I guess the simple answer to your question is marketing.
Okay, gotcha.
But they're different concepts, really. And also, like, Gambit is a larger brand. Not that it's going to happen, but if the world wanted 5,000 cases of this tomorrow, I can do that. Like, I've bought some stock. The Ampersand is my little house of curiosities, and it's not always so little, but a lot of it is like the next, the Ampersand Optimus is a 55 barrel series. And so that's a good amount of whiskey, but it's not a whole lot of whiskey, especially for the whole world. And, the next release that I'm not supposed to talk about, but like it's even slightly smaller, it's meant to be the house where I find these interesting projects, and it might even be inherently limited, and that's kind of the Ampersand series.
Okay. Can we expect to see maybe Gambit number 7, 8, 9 at some point, or variations on number 6, or?
I think I shouldn't push my luck on number of barrels. I mean, it's possible, but what I'm probably more interested in is either kind of focusing on different aspects of the series, maybe a cask strength. I mean, honestly, I'd really love people to try the cask strength because I feel like you understand so much more about the whiskey when you try it both ways. And there's some whiskeys that are kind of just what you think as you go up and down in proof, and there are others it's revelatory, just Optimus is one of those that it changes dramatically in terms of what you get at different proofs. Gambit is also definitely one of those in terms of which barrels play out the most and whether the bass comes through the most or the treble comes through the most. So maybe we'll focus on different sort of barrel finishes there. But for now, I'm just trying to keep the main Gambit number 6 standard, really good high quality, and then maybe look at a cask strength.
Yeah. I was going to say, I did a little diving into Foley Family Spirits, and like you said, they've got their fingers in a lot of pots now. Right. So I feel like, you could be definitely the benefactor from that because, they've got Irish whiskey, they've got Scotch. Yeah. So, you got to be like, this is a playground for me kind of thing,
I wish everyone would let me use their toys, but whether they will or not, it's a great set of toys. I mean, Distiller is amazing stuff. I love those guys. Loch Lomond has an amazing portfolio of spirits, and obviously Loch Lomond whiskeys are part of those, but it's also Glen Scotia and a number of, they've just got not only a great quality of whiskey, but a huge diversity of different options out there. So
we tried the two stacks too.
Yeah, that I'm super fascinated with. I feel like, I don't want to speak for other whiskey drinkers. It's easy to have a kind of narrow conception of what Irish whiskey is.
Agreed. And they're pushing the boundary.
They're pushing the boundaries, and also Killowen is another distillery that we work with, and they're doing amazing things as well. So yeah, it's great to have good whiskey buddies.
Right. Well, we want to give you a chance to tell the folks where they can find you and where they can find these products and things like that. So
yeah. So I'm at Chip Tate Whiskey on Instagram, and pretty easy to find in the same way on Facebook, other things like that. But y'all should be able to find these things around. It's distributed through Southern Glazers, except in states where Southern Glazers doesn't, work, like in control states. But my point is, it should be generally available. And if it's not, shoot me a message and let me know where you're having trouble, and we'll see what we can do, because we're definitely trying to connect people with bottles.
Right. Now, any online type things?
Let's see. I don't really have much outside of Instagram. We've got...
No, I'm sorry. Any places they can order online?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. So all of the websites have a direct-to-consumer option.
Awesome.
I mentioned, Penumbra and Grand Nota, my mezcal and tequila respectively, are just launching, so they don't have a DTC option. That's still kind of unfolding. But
Right.
Gambit and Ampersand and all of that, they do have a DTC option. I know Optimus is always one of those things you got to check availability.
Right.
And so I don't want to say that it's available online right now. It has been. I don't know if it is at this moment. But if it isn't, it should be very soon, because I've still got some bottles coming out. So point is, if you can't get it right now, give it a second and we'll get those bottles out, because we're going to be out pretty soon, but we are not out yet. I'm trying to make sure of that.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man, it's been great.
I've heard lots about you, and we talked about another project that you're kind of involved with, of some Kentucky guys here. So that's you're doing some great work here, and I'm very excited to see what you do in the future, because you are definitely pushing the boundary, man.
I'm trying to do some good stuff. I hope people like it, and I appreciate your support and appreciate you having me on.
No problem.
All right.
So you can find the Bourbon Road on all kinds of social media type things, like the X and Facebook. We've got a big roadie group, but the place we're trying to get folks to go and check out is our website, thebourbonroad.com. That's where you can check out all our 500 episodes, and you can do a quick dive and type in Chip Tate's number, and that episode's going to come up, and you can literally listen to it immediately. You can type in Malice, Malaus, and it'll literally bring up the clip where we talk about that. My buddy did the website, and it's quite amazing.
Nice. That's great.
But sometimes we get someone like Chip Tate on here to talk about his new product. Sometimes we sit around and just taste some whiskey and talk about it. But the one thing we always do is have a lot of fun. So one other thing you can do that helps us on down the road is you can go to your podcast platform and subscribe to us and leave us a review. But until the next time, we'll see you down the Bourbon Road.
On the Bourbon Road, where the good times roll, passing bottles like a piece of soul. Every pour's a memory, every sip a spark, lighting up the night in the Kentucky dark. Yeah, we laugh too loud, let the worries go, find a little truth in the afterglow. Ain't no man, just the ties we've sown on the long winding Bourbon Road. Here's to the nights that turned into dawn, to the friends who stayed when the rest moved on, to the clink of glass and the stories spun, and the quiet peace when the night is done. On a Bourbon Road, we ain't alone. Every mile's marked by the love we hearts we hold. There's a fire that never gets old. So pour it up, let the moment slow. A little bit of life in every glow. Yeah, forever we'll call this home on the long winding Bourbon Road.